Hello there, this is James Oscorty, 1978, and Knight's Tightrope, or to give the original Japanese title simply Shoujo, or Girls. A film full of everything that I adore about East Asian cinema, but which many other people will, at the very least, lose all patience with around halfway through, because while it's summarised as a movie in which two high school girls become independently obsessed with the idea of watching someone die, that doesn't even begin to describe even those two single subplots of this film. Instead, I think the best way to describe this movie from a Western perspective would be as being a picaresque narrative, with the two protagonists, Atsuko and Yuki, being caught up in a tangled and conveniently contrived web of connected characters and their interactions, which explore the worst aspects of society, and indeed an entire world that idolises young women, but also exploits, objectifies and abuses them, punishing them for their failures, but paradoxically punishing them even more for their successes, and who in the end, having up until that point buried and hidden away their insecurities, doubts, fears and emotional agony like good little girls are supposed to do, insert song from Disney's Frozen here, overcome them by admitting the truth and being there for each other as friends, while one of the other protagonists does in fact, quote, reap what she has sown, a constant theme throughout this movie. Indeed, the fact that this film is so dark, bitter and vengeful, and yet so full of inspiration and hope, on top of the reality that societies all over the world, including ours, impose an impossible ideal upon teenage girls in particular, which includes literally allowing themselves to be exploited and being severely punished if they deviate from that standard even slightly, is truly brought home by the fact that the protagonists attend a Christian girls' school where morality is preached above all else, but where Atsuko is so viciously bullied for being the national kendo champion 5 years running that she fakes a limp in the hopes that her classmates will finally stop being so envious of her and literally wishing her dead. And in the meantime, having stolen the manuscript that Yuki wrote, published it, and earned a literary award, it turns out that their Japanese teacher was also having sex with at least one of his students. This use of Christianity as an example of the ideal of purity corrupted by hypocrisy and enforced with the threat of punishment is also personified by Yuki's grandmother, a senile old woman who I assume was once the headmistress of the school which Yuki now attends, reciting lectures that she used to give to her students about the preciousness of youth and how lucky they are to be born at a time of such equality and opportunity, but also how she will not tolerate anyone who dishonours the school or its uniform, still swinging around the yardstick that she used to use to beat her students and violently yelling at and physically attacking Yuki and her mother for things which her students did decades ago, including one time when Yuki was a child, hitting her so violently across the back of the hand that she still bears the scar. Before I wrap this up, however, I also feel compelled to mention two subplots which require a spoiler warning, so if you want to watch the movie first, then it's linked down to Underball with English subtitles. Because on the one hand, seeing the new student Shiori rope Atsuko into helping her falsely accuse men of molesting them so that she can blackmail them for money was deeply troubling, not least because it helps to reinforce the grossly false and dangerous myth of malicious women deliberately destroying men's lives. Oh, poor Bill Cosby, which is making women even more afraid to report sexual assault than they already were. While on the other hand, seeing a middle-aged man demand sex from Yuki in exchange for information on the whereabouts of a dying young boy's father, another subplot which would take far too long to explain, was even more disturbing, especially when it became obvious that he was projecting all of his bitterness and resentment against, as well as his lust for, his own high school-aged daughter onto Yuki, causing us to wonder what the point of all of this nastiness actually was, until in the final example of It's a Small World, which, as I indicated earlier, runs through this film a little too blatantly for comfort, it was still deeply revealing when, at the very end of the movie, it turned out that the middle-aged man who almost raped and beat Yuki was Shiori's father, and that all of the toxic bitterness and yearning for revenge that they each projected onto middle-aged men and teenage girls respectively was a result of their own hatred for each other. When all was said and done then, as I indicated earlier, the two of them ultimately reaped what they had sown, and while Yuki in particular could have easily taken the same path of bitterness, hatred, the need for revenge and eventual self-destruction, it was trust and friendship which finally saved both her and Atsuko. So while the fact that every protagonist is connected to every other through a web of subplots as if the writer was playing 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon did make me snap, oh come on, at least once, and it becomes difficult to follow, especially when the line becomes blurred between what's actually happening in the movie and what Yuki is writing. I still recommend this film to everyone who loves movies because of the characters, their tragedies and their triumphs, their lives and what we can learn from them, and above all, the broader insights, questions, meaning and exploration of society, not because this happened, and then this happened, and this scene was magnificently shot, and then there was a cool explosion.